Their melodies painted the world in gold, every note a promise of happiness, every chorus a dance of light. But behind the glitter of perfection, something fragile was breaking. In 1980, ABBA, the band that defined joy for an entire generation, faced a moment so intimate, so human, that it could only be told through music. It wasn't fame, scandal, or rivalry that fractured them. It was a song, a single, heart-wrenching composition born not from success, but from sorrow. It would sound like victory to millions, yet for those who created it, it was a quiet farewell. This is not just the story of a hit record. It is the story of two lovers who sang their goodbye while the whole world kept dancing, unaware. The song would become a monument of honesty in a world obsessed with shine. And as we look back at the moment, ABBA's light began to flicker. We'll uncover how music turned heartbreak into immortality. Because sometimes, the songs that make us smile were written by people who were learning how to survive. Now, let's return to the decade when everything looked perfect. The golden years that hid the first cracks in paradise. The late 1970s, ABBA had become a phenomenon, the very definition of pop perfection. Their songs, Dancing Queen, Mamma Mia, Fernando, weren't just music. They were moments that stitched themselves into people's lives. Every tour was sold out. Every new single was an event. The faces of four smiling Swedes filled magazine covers, and their glittering costumes became icons of a brighter, simpler world. Yet, while the world celebrated their harmony, the harmony within the group was beginning to fade. Behind the laughter and choreographed smiles, exhaustion crept in. Years of relentless touring and studio sessions had taken their toll. The public saw unity. The reality was strain. Two marriages stood at the heart of ABBA's success. Björn Ulvaeus and Agnetha Fältskog, the golden couple of Swedish pop, and Benny Andersson with Annie Frid Lyngstad, the creative backbone. Their personal bonds had once fueled the band's emotional chemistry. But fame is a demanding guest. It gives everything and quietly takes more. Slowly, small silences replaced long conversations. Glimmers of tension began to appear where once there had been laughter. They performed together as if nothing was wrong. But when the lights went out, each retreated into their own private world of uncertainty. The music still sounded joyful, but within the notes, something heavier was beginning to breathe, a sadness that words could not yet express, and soon, that sadness would find its voice in a song written not to entertain the world, but to confess what could no longer be said aloud. By 1980, the invisible cracks within ABBA had turned into quiet fault lines. The more they smiled for cameras, the more distance grew between them. There were no public fights, no scandalous headlines, only a strange silence. The kind that settles between two people who know each other too well, and yet no longer understand how to begin again. Björn and Agnetha had shared more than fame. They had shared youth, dreams, and songs that defined an era. But success has its own gravity. It pulls lovers apart even when they stand side by side. Every interview, every photo shoot, every lyric became a reminder of what once felt effortless. In the studio, they remained professionals, voices blending perfectly, eyes rarely meeting. Friends later recalled the air felt heavy, as if the music itself was holding its breath. The tension was unspoken, but it lived in every chord, In every lyric they tried to finish without saying too much. Outside the studio, the press still called them the perfect pop family. But perfection had become a mask, one they could no longer wear comfortably. The applause at the end of each performance sounded the same, yet to those standing on stage, it felt strangely distant. When love begins to dissolve, even success becomes meaningless. And when you've built your entire world on harmony, what happens when that harmony starts to hurt? It was in this emotional storm that Björn would sit down one night, searching for words he couldn't say out loud, and instead began to write them into a song. It began quietly, a man alone with a notebook, trying to translate heartbreak into something that could be sung. Björn Ulvaeus had always written about love, but never like this. This time, the words came from the ruins of his own marriage. There was no anger, no revenge, only the ache of acceptance. He wrote about loss, about defeat, about how love can vanish without anyone truly meaning to hurt the other. The title came almost instinctively, "The Winner Takes It All." A simple phrase, yet behind it, a lifetime of shared memories now divided into winners and losers. But the deepest twist of fate was yet to come. The song, written by Björn about the collapse of his love, would be sung by Agnetha, the very woman he had lost. In the studio, her voice trembled but never broke. She stood before the microphone, singing lines that mirrored her own heartache, delivering a story the world would think was fiction. Every word, every pause, felt like reopening a wound. And yet, she turned that pain into something transcendent. When she sang, "The winner takes it all, the loser standing small," it wasn't performance anymore. It was truth, set to melody. Even the sound engineers felt it, the air in the room shifting, as if everyone knew they were witnessing more than a recording. They were capturing the sound of two people saying goodbye in the only language they both still understood, music. And the world, unknowingly, was about to hear that goodbye. The song would travel farther than any of them imagined, a global hit born from private heartbreak. But with success came irony, and that irony would change everything. When "The Winner Takes It All" was released, the world didn't hear heartbreak. They heard beauty. The single soared to the top of charts across continents. Critics called it ABBA's most mature work, a masterpiece of emotion and precision. Radio stations played it endlessly, and millions sang along, unaware they were echoing the end of a love story. Audiences saw victory, but for the people who wrote and performed it, it was the sound of something breaking. Each applause felt like a wave washing over a secret too painful to share. Every award, every chart position, was a reminder that their most painful truth had become their greatest success. It was the cruel paradox of fame. The song that tore them apart was also the song that made them eternal. In interviews, they smiled politely, offering vague answers about universal feelings and relationships everyone understands. But those closest to the band knew this was not a metaphor. It was biography set to music. Yet, the very honesty that cost them so much personally was what made the song timeless. Its vulnerability connected across languages and generations. Listeners didn't need to know the story. They could feel it. Pain has a sound, and ABBA had given it melody. Still, behind the charts and trophies, something quiet was changing. The emotional weight of success had left its mark, and soon, The same silence that filled their marriage would begin to fill the space between the four of them. After The Winner Takes It All, nothing inside ABBA was quite the same. The song had given them one final peek, but it had also stripped away the illusion that they could go back to how things were. They still worked together, still smiled for the cameras, but the laughter felt rehearsed, and the silences in between grew longer. Their next album, The Visitors, 1981, carried a different tone. Sophisticated, distant, reflective. Gone were the bright choruses of their early years. Instead, the melodies felt colder, as if winter had entered their sound. It was music made by people who had lived through something. People who had learned that not all endings are loud. There was no official breakup, no press conference, no public goodbye. ABBA simply drifted apart, each member retreating into new lives, new projects, perhaps hoping to find a sense of self beyond the shadow of the band. For the fans, the silence was confusing. For the four of them, it was necessary. Sometimes, the hardest thing to end is not a career, but a story that once felt infinite. And so, the group that had given the world its happiest songs faded away quietly, leaving behind echoes instead of farewells. But their music did not fade. In fact, as the years passed, it began to grow again, carried by new generations who discovered something timeless in that delicate balance between sorrow and beauty. The world had said goodbye to ABBA, but ABBA's story wasn't done, because art has a way of outliving its creators, and that truth would soon become their lasting legacy. Decades have passed, yet The Winner Takes It All still plays, in cafes, on radios, in quiet rooms where memories linger. Its sound is no longer just a song from the 1980s. It has become a feeling, a reflection of love, loss, and the courage to be honest when the world is watching. For Björn, Benny, Agnetha, and Annie Fried, time has softened the pain but preserved the truth. They once gave the world its most joyful melodies, but their most enduring masterpiece came from heartbreak. That is the paradox that defines them, the beauty born from fracture, the art carved from silence. Today, generations who never lived through ABBA's golden years still find themselves moved by that trembling voice, by the quiet dignity of a woman singing her own goodbye. Because in the end, music like this doesn't age. It simply changes meaning as we grow. The winner did take it all, but what they won was something far greater than trophies or fame. They won permanence. They won the right to be remembered not as perfect idols, but as human beings who turned their pain into light. And maybe that's what all great songs really are. Truths we could never say, set free in the form of music.